I see designers kind of looking at this generative AI as a starting point, a launch pad for something more creative. They may craft an example website, and now they're not, I already saw this yesterday, designers not using Latin lorem ipsum anymore. They actually generated all the text using GPT, and it made for a better design presentation. So we're reviewing it now with real text. And
yeah, it's interesting. It seems like generative AI has moved the starting point forward in a lot of different industries. Like you can start a project in a much less rough version of a draft, which has all sorts of ancillary benefits. And it's interesting too because we've talked a bit about how the NLU training models that were used maybe a year ago are now looking kind of out of date, because with GPT, if you're prompt engineering, you don't have to start at zero. You can start way further down the line and get things moving much more quickly.
Yep. And then people who don't have design skills or particularly good writing skills get to do generic stuff that's passable. And they get to play in a game they have otherwise been excluded from. I believe that we're on a pathway to having the discussion about, what is work, what is a job to someone, and what does work look like, and what should work look like. If machines can do our jobs, of course we can be nervous, about losing our income, but we can also wonder on the other side of that coin, then what do we do, and what does a job look like? And so companies, being so focused on productivity, and then employees being focused on their productivity within that company, now do we start talking about what it looks like to be an employee and a happy employee that's enjoying their job? And can these conversations take us to being more employee-centric?
Welcome back to Invisible Machines. Over the last couple of episodes, Robb and I have been digging into sort of the relationship between experience design and AI. Last episode, we had a great conversation with experience design legend Jesse James Garrett, and we kind of came to the conclusion at the end that conversational design or prompt design is really kind of a solid entry point and just an important role for experience designers to take as more and more solutions that bring technology closer to users involve conversational interfaces as opposed to, the strictly visual interfaces we've become accustomed to over the past couple of decades. So I wanted to dig into that a little more with Robb. Like, what does it mean to be a conversational designer? What does it mean to design conversations? What does that look like? How does GPT figure into that work? We kind of cover a lot of ground in sort of a short period of time, so I guess we'll go ahead and get to that conversation now. All right, so Robb, for the past 2 episodes now, we've been talking a lot about how AI and UX need to kind of come together. And last week we had a conversation with Jesse James Garrett, and he, I think, kind of came to the conclusion, or we all did by the end, that maybe where it starts for experienced designers working with AI is in prompt design or conversational design. So I thought maybe we could talk a little bit about what that role might look like, or even what versions of it you're seeing today.
Yeah, design. Where is it going? What are the apps of tomorrow? What do they look like? And who's going to make them? And are they going to be made on the fly? Or are these going to be pre-created experiences that we, as a team, get together, design, and share with the world? And of course, the answer is both. I think, if you look at the value of being able to dynamically generate ephemeral apps that appear and disappear for one-time use, they can be very customized to the user, very customized to the task. And from a UX standpoint, we all know the rule is like the more choices, the harder it is, the more cognitive load. So if we have this context engine that really is at the back of everything, I mean, ChatGPT is cool, but what's most cool about it is what it can do with context, how well it can use context. To me, that's what I'm most excited. How well it talks is awesome, but how well it uses context is most interesting. So now we feed the system context. It feeds us a dialed-in custom experience for that context. Whether that experience is a graphical one or a conversational one, probably just depends on the appropriateness of one versus the other, based on, is it data heavy, probably more graphical. If it's more workflow oriented, then it's going to be more conversational. But it'll always be in context of a conversation. And so it feels like design becomes like this idea of designing these micro elements that are really cool, these components that can be mixed and sequenced together to create experiences on the fly, like a map with a pin, that you can move around. And we'll just keep iterating on these components. And then the other side of it is the whole experience and looking at it holistically. So in a way, UX, I think I used to say that UX is the new CX, just because so much of our interactions are now digital. Mm-hmm. And if you go into a grocery store and you do the auto checkout, like, we start to see that, how UX is infiltrating even our physical store experiences. So UX is the new CX. If you started walking around the store and there was a bot that you could ask questions and could guide you, we're starting to see that happen more, getting more towards UX being the new CX. And so now we look at UXers as a community and really starting to up-level their worldview in terms of what they design, going up to more of a CX level, looking at the experience of a customer more relationship-oriented, more holistically, and then thinking about the experience more broadly. And then we kind of flip back, as I said earlier, to the micro UIs, where then you have like visual designers they're going to focus more on the components that enhance a conversation or contribute to a conversation. So, just like a PowerPoint is to a presentation in a TED Talk, what you put in there and what content you put in there, that has to be designed in some way. And if it's going to be an original talk, that slide probably doesn't exist, and it's probably not going to be well crafted by some AI. So yeah, I see designers kind of looking at this generative AI as a starting point, a launch pad for something more creative. They may craft an example website, and now they're not, I already saw this yesterday, designers not using Latin lorem ipsum anymore. They actually generated all the text using GPT, and it made for a better design presentation. So we're reviewing it now with real text, and it's interesting how now when the text has to be written, it gets handed to somebody who would typically do that. A lot of times it's not a copywriter. A lot of times it's just the business, somebody on the business side writing this stuff. And so now they get this starting point that isn't Latin. They get the starting point that was GPT written, and then they'll edit it, fact check it, polish it, and out the door it goes. So in that particular example where somebody designed it, changed the text from Latin to GPT, and it didn't radically change anyone's job. It certainly, if either side was changed, it was more on the business side, not having to write all that text, spend as much time on the text. They still got to edit it. And then generative imagery, I think it's the same idea. If you're going to, make an ad for Boeing and it's going to show, let's say it's for whatever, an aeronautics engineer, and you want to put him on a beach in a chair with all the planes in the air, and you can say, we keep planes in the air. You may just, have GPT create the background with the airplanes in the air, but then the artist, may draw or photograph, either one, the mechanic, because you want to get the right person and the right characteristics, and you really want to fine tune and think about who they are and how to connect them. And you may just not need it's like your green screen, right? It's just you don't let someone else do the background, let GPT do the background. And then you spend more time getting the detail right.
Yeah, it's interesting. It seems like generative AI has moved the starting point forward in a lot of different industries. Like you can start a project in a much less rough version of a draft, which has all sorts of ancillary benefits. And it's interesting too because we've talked a bit about how the NLU training models that were used maybe a year ago are now looking kind of out of date, because with GPT, if you're prompt engineering, you don't have to start at zero. You can start way further down the line and get things moving much more quickly.
Yep. And then people who don't have design skills or particularly good writing skills get to do generic stuff that's passable. And they get to play in a game they have otherwise been excluded from. And that's just going to be generic production work that they can now do. That was probably somewhat soul sucking for the designer anyway. So yeah, I think it's going to change. I don't think it's going to be as radical as everybody thinks. It's the same with coding. The idea that, code will go faster. Yes, it will. But there's, everybody's got their own stack, their tech stack, and trying to feed GPT all the details of your tech stack and then get it to write code that's appropriate for that stack. I mean, it's already tough enough. I played a lot with it on writing SQL queries, and trying to feed it the schema, a complex schema, and get it to write a query. It's pretty. It does a surprisingly good job given my expectations, but far from writing a high performing query. So, and then the writing of the query, someone's got to read it and fact check it, so to speak, make sure it is right, it is high performing. It's if you don't have the skills to read what it wrote and review it and edit it, then it's not going to work. You're gonna have a lot of problems, and you're just going to get stuck. So the skill set, again, velocity goes up on all this stuff. That's what I see. And I don't see a shortage of demand anywhere in sight for more content and more applications and software. They say we're going to write more software in the next 5 years than we've written in the last 40 years. So I think when people make these observations about, jobs being removed, they got to look at the words. It's more jobs changed.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not taking into account the potential demand that happens as, content and applications become cheaper to build, demand goes up for more applications. So unless we can see a ceiling on the demand, then we can't assume that, that these jobs are going to go away. I think it's just going to be more of a velocity thing. We're going to be able to, humans will be able to do a lot more, a lot faster, to meet the demand, and demand for it will probably just continue to go up and up and up. But
and my brother, I was going to say my brother is an IT lead at a tech company, and when we were hanging out recently, he was telling me about how he used ChatGPT to create code to automate essentially an HR task to shut down people's various accounts when they left the company. And it was a huge multi-step process that would take someone better part of the day. And he was able to kind of use ChatGPT to write code and then do some research to try and patch it. And he was able to automate an experience. It was funny because I told him, like, you're pretty much doing what we wrote about in this book.
Yeah.
In some sense. And it's interesting to me that, I think as we were writing the book, in my mind, I was picturing large business or enterprise kind of having these first explosive moments with AI where it was kind of unleashed on the public and people would freak out, but it's materializing differently. And I saw that ChatGPT is, they're going to release some plugins soon that essentially allow people to create their own automated to-do lists and a lot of other things. So it's interesting too, because we talk in the book about our hope that this technology has a democratizing power. And like you mentioned, it can give people agency who never felt like they had it before. And so in one sense, it's inspiring to see that is kind of happening.
Yeah.
Individuals seem like they're as far along in their journey as a lot of enterprises. I mean, when we were doing our pre-show calisthenics, Robb, you mentioned a Gartner study that you read that like only 12% of enterprise has a plan in place.
Yeah, 12% have a plan on how they might adopt ChatGPT at the moment. It's for the fastest adopted app in history. It's actually pretty low, because they're just kind of forward thinking, right? That was the question. It wasn't have you, it's are you thinking about it? And they're not even really thinking about it. Just mind-boggling to me. But the thing I want to say too is like demand. On that demand side, I just want to circle back to that because I think it's also important that people understand that the bar for good creative has room to grow also. Not just more creative, not just more applications, but there's a lot of room for improvement. So we recently just did a user test. It was pretty comprehensive. And we were testing the ability to take an appointment over the phone through automation. And we picked one of the leading vendors, that in conversational AI, which was a competitor to OneReach, competitor to us. And it's one that, they have on their website an example of you call in and you make an appointment over the phone with an automated system. And so they're, they wouldn't put it on their website if they weren't very proud of it, right? This is obviously them providing an example of one of their best experiences and capabilities of the system. So we were user testing it against an alpha bot that we had created for a company that wants to do the similar thing, but is super sensitive about automation, very high touch, very white glove. Feels like their customers care about that human on the other end, and so they're very reticent to do anything other than automate, behind the scenes, or automate to help the human experience become better. So anyway, we're doing this intensive test, NPS scores, and the whole 9 yards, and we did an A/B test between this experience, that would probably parallel something you'd find on United Airlines, the one from our competitor, and then the one we had created, this alpha version we had created, and we'd used generative AI in a unique way, and the containment. So the percentage of people that actually got an appointment was like 80+% on the competitive bot, and the containment score on the alpha bot that we were using generative with was like 98%. And so we see, okay, that's a pretty big difference. It's almost full containment, right? That's quite amazing. But not like this huge leap, right? Not this massive leap. 80 for most companies, they would think of that as a very big success story that they, on a complex use case like that. And so they would probably internally, wave the flag as that's a big win. Contained 80%, tons of cost savings. But the NPS score, this is where it gets interesting. The NPS score on the competitive one was 40 or 4. And the NPS score typically for like a call center, to give you kind of an idea, is about 5 or 50. So what we say is people were contained, they were able to get their appointment through automation, but they were less satisfied with that as compared to, typically how satisfied they are with a human. So that's not going to pass, right? For this company that is so customer centric, they're not going to deploy a solution that's worse than what they have today, even if it costs less. But the NPS score on the alpha bot that we launched was 83, like off the charts. An 83, right?
It's huge.
Yeah. So what we see is that even though the containment rates are much narrower, like the margin, the difference, the delta was like 83 to 98. The NPS score was like the difference between worse than a call center to much better than a call center. And the main difference as you listen to people interact with the system was all the subtle little fine-tuning things, like making sure that the bot was like highly responsive from a timing standpoint, making sure that it clearly understood what the person had said, all of the exception handling, because people were going off the walls, on the things they were asking, like, how do I know, what do I do if I can't have to cancel? Hey, do you have anything sooner? I'll take the middle appointment you suggested. I have school in the morning, and Wednesday afternoon I can't, but any other time is great. All of this stuff. And it was just getting it, like, shockingly well, just understanding all of that to the point that people were like, wow, this is I came in, it answered, it gave me an appointment, it understood me. I was out with that NPS score. My point in this long story is that there's a lot of fine tuning left to do with all of our experiences out there. We can raise the bar on every app interface, on every conversational experience. There's a lot of room for improvement. And if this velocity just translated into just a higher bar for UX across the board, that would probably be best case scenario, right? Now we take the same amount of time, but we just raise the bar on the quality of the experience. We do more user testing, do more iteration, and ultimately everyone wins in that scenario. And that's just, in my ideal world, that's where this goes. It just goes to a race for who can offer their customer the best experience, not who can get their costs down the most while compromising, the least.
Yeah, and that's a huge paradigm shift in call centers and IVR in particular, because it feels like there's sort of this unspoken agreement between customers and businesses where like, hey, businesses are like, yeah, we know this experience is pretty crappy, but we're just going to do it because it saves us enough money to make it worth annoying our customers. And customers just sort of accept that, oh yeah, when I call in, it's going to take way longer than I want it to, and I might not get what I want.
Right.
And this proves that there are much better ways of doing things.
Exactly. And it's also like on separate channels. I know some people think the phone channel is going away. I wholeheartedly disagree. And I remember people saying that about email 20 years ago. And I think it has a lot to do with just the speed in which and efficiency in which we can communicate data by talking versus typing. So I really don't believe that until there's a faster way, a higher bandwidth way to communicate data for many people, that it's going to go anywhere. But with that said, making those experiences amazing, allowing you to text in as well as call in, as well as WhatsApp in, as well as use a mobile app that has a bot in it, as well as, reach out over Slack or Teams, like just broadening the channels and the access, just making it easier, creating experiences on all these channels. There's so much room for just creating better experiences than what we have. And fine-tuning is kind of the key word there. With velocity offers the opportunity for more fine-tuning and more innovation on design versus technology innovation. And I think that's the companies that get that and get after that understand that it's not about containment scores, it's about NPS scores, and they care about that. They're the ones that are gonna win in this game, in my opinion.
Yeah, and this is a familiar struggle for experienced designers, like getting people to focus on the right things. But I think as soon as a few large companies do this right, it's going to reset the bar, because
I agree.
It's that big of a difference.
Yeah, and I think experienced designers are always frustrated that they're not given the time, that they don't get to iterate enough. I've known many that aren't even there to see it implemented. They design something and they walk away and they don't even know if it ever got built. And to be able to see it being built and it become more like a craft where it gets built and designed and iterated on in real time, or at least at a high velocity, it changes the game and it ups and increases the quality overall. So as usual, I'm pretty excited about better experiences and better tools for experienced designers, and that's where I think this is going to go. But I do find it interesting that there's this conversation going on to kind of pause on GPT-4.
Yeah.
and say, hey, let's pause AI development for 6 months while we figure this out.
Yeah, it's hard to know how much of that is genuinely out of concern or maybe some people wanting to play catch up. It's kind of it's kind of difficult to tell.
But
seems
it's
unlikely.
Tough. Yeah, and for technologists to say that, because you're like, pause. What is that measuring stick for where we're pausing exactly? Is it just the number that's attached to the end of GPT, like 4? So no GPT, no 5s. Everyone can do 4s and 3s and 2s and 1s, but no 5s. Is it the size of the language model? Because that's not where it's going, is bigger language models. It's going to, more fine tuning on the language models that we have. I'm very surprised by it. It doesn't seem realistic to me, and maybe there's something I don't understand about, how to pause something like that. But how do you pause the development of something that's so abstract as AI?
Yeah, I mean, it's like a train. You train and hit the brakes, but it's not going to stop for like 3 miles.
Right. Or even more, it's like a cloud. That's like, you're like, stop. Like, what? Stop where? Like, stop the cloud that you can see, stop the cloud that you can't see. Like, where do you stop it? What's stopping? What particular things? Yeah,
I mean, it does seem like there could be a very legitimate case for being a little more slow and deliberate as we move through this stuff, but even that seems a bit like a stretch. And I feel like if these companies pause development, as long as they don't unplug the products, I feel like people are still going to use them and they're going to push it forward in their own way, which maybe that would be a nice outcome too, but that's not going to stop.
That's kind of where I went. Is like, for the folks I know that are doing this, and they're pretty advanced at the moment. What they're trying to do is like the sort of next challenges that they're trying to solve is the parts where it does unnecessary damage. So think about Elon Musk with self-driving cars. Where is he at with that? It's not getting the car to go or stop anymore. Like that he's figured out. How to turn the wheel, all of those things is figured out. He's trying to nail it down so it doesn't kill anybody or hit anything, right? So if you were to say pause self-driving, you're basically saying don't make it safer, because that's where it is right now, right? Is trying to make it safer, and I'm sure he doesn't mean that, but yeah, it does sound like that.
Yeah, and that's an idea we've talked about too. The idea that like making machines less dumb, might ultimately be a good thing, because machines kill a lot of people.
That's where I go to, and all this is just, some part of me just wonders if the whole AI thing and the words just need to go away. Smarter machines, dumber machines. Dumber machines kill people. Smarter machines can be designed to save people's lives. Cars, factories, skill saws that can tell the difference between fingers and wood, and a 2x4. It's just a smarter machine, and if that machine gets so complex that it's dangerous, then it's a dangerous machine. Just like dumb machines are dangerous machines. And so we need to be anti-dangerous machines, whether they're dumb or smart, and pro-safe machines, whether they're dumb or smart.
Yeah, and artificial intelligence sort of implies, at least to some people, that we're trying to copy human intelligence, which to me would be maybe the most dangerous outcome. If a machine was as irrational as people can be, but also had so much more power, then we're in trouble.
Yeah. What I like about all this, though, is that I believe that we're on on a pathway to having the discussion about, you know, what is work, what is a job to someone, and what does work look like, and what should work look like. If machines can do our jobs, of course we can be nervous, you know, about losing our income, but we can also wonder on the other side of that coin, then what do we do, and what does a job look like? And so companies, you know, being so focused on productivity, and then employees being focused on their productivity within that company, now do we start talking about what it looks like to be an employee and a happy employee that's enjoying their job? And can these conversations take us to being more employee-centric? It's sort of like customer first, employee last. You know, shareholder, customer, employee tends to be how it normally goes. You know, are we shifting to more of an employee first over time here, where we're looking at, you know, the experience of work? And so to kind of ground it and bring it home, is slowing down AI just about slowing down the transition of how quickly our jobs change, so we're not so disrupted and affected by this? And if that's all it's about, is, you know, caring about the experience that workers are going to have throughout this process, and the identity crisis that many might face because they have to seek therapy to go from a productivity, you know, value to a connection and creativity value system, and say, you know, I'm not what I produce, I'm the connections I have. And if we're just trying to slow that down to give people a chance, what I like about, you know, that idea is that it starts to say, let's talk about how to make work more enjoyable for people. And if that's the beginning of that discussion, I kind of like that avenue, right? Not how do we stop AI from, you know, destroying the world, but hey, let's start to think about what jobs should look like and the experience for employees. If that's where this goes, I'd be pretty happy and okay with it.
Yeah, and it'd be good to apply that same line of thinking toward like how it should be regulated, how it can be used equitably, so that, you know,
right,
people with far less means or marginalized people are seeing a benefit from it as well.
Yeah. I mean, you know, there are people, I'm sure, having this discussion all the time right now, right? And it's fun to have it, but there is that idea that says, you know, you have a investor sitting in their house, you know, watching their money grow, and then you have a company that they've invested in being run by a management team that's got stock in that company, so they're essentially an investor, and they're sitting back watching their money grow, looking at the employees as well. So they sit on the bridge, right, between investors and the employee experience. And then you got, you know, the employee that's, you know, getting a paycheck and trying to enjoy their lives. And that investor typically just, they don't really care about that employee's experience. Like that's not their motivation, right? They're not motivated. They didn't invest in a company to try to create a better employee experience. They invested in a company to see their money grow.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, as we endeavor to have this conversation about what can employee experience look like, you know, we face this opportunity where now it doesn't have to be a choice. You know, should we make the investor happy or the employee happy? Which one gets to be happy? Maybe we start getting to a place where both can be, right? Where the discussion and the tug of war can sort of stop, or at least have less conflict, and we have this period where productivity can stay high, and we can actually care about employee experience, and not see the bottom line get hurt by it. And I think those CEOs that sit in the middle, those management teams that embrace this and run towards it, I think, they'll see that this will give them a huge competitive advantage, because they're, to live in that world where they're not constantly fighting between these two worlds, not trying to get employees to produce more, to the point, just to the point where they don't quit, trying to get investors a return, while trying to work their employees harder than every other company. We now see a world where employee experience and profitability can coexist for a while. So yeah, I look forward to those conversations and those projects that drive in this direction. To take it back to the Gartner thing, though, seeing this 12% kind of says they're not quite there yet. This isn't a run towards thing. It's a fear, and mitigate risk, wait for someone else to jump scenario, I think.
Yeah, and to bring it back to experienced designers, I mean, this could be another opportunity for them to kind of lead a charge internally. I mean, experienced designers have a long, glorious track record of advocating for end users. And I feel like now it almost feels like they're people advocating for other people, because especially in terms of like an employee experience, they get to be involved in creating these, I guess we like to put the word hyper in front of things, but you really now can create these hyper contextualized experiences, which I think to the design mind is a really exciting challenge, because you have so much more control and information, and so much more to draw from. And then also, as you mentioned, you get to not only ideally design these solutions, but you get to watch them being used. And you get to be, if not the human in the loop, you can have a human in the loop who's in there jumping in to improve the experiences, to move them along, and that's allowing you to iterate and continue to improve them. I mean, it's almost like a accelerated design cycle that could be rather intoxicating, I think, if you get in the mix.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, the hyperautomation bandwagon, I think, it's interesting because it's almost like AI. Everyone's got their own definition for what it means. I saw one recently, I think it was a Gartner paper, again. They said hyperautomation is the act of automating as much as you can, as fast as you can. Just simply put. And I found that clarifying. Like, yes, that's pretty much what it is. And if you wanted to just add a layer, you'd say hyperautomation is the act of automating as much as you can, as fast as you can, while being concerned about the safety of your employees and customers.
And the quality of the experience.
And the quality of the experience,
Get that ingredient in there as well.
Cool. The quality of life for your employees and customers, a better way to say that,
and maybe even an improvement in quality of life for the whole world. Wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah, wouldn't that? We could all just...
All right, Rob. Well, until next week. It's been fun.
It has, as usual.
All right, thanks again for joining us on Invisible Machines. We are produced in partnership with UX Magazine. Be sure to follow UX Magazine wherever you get your podcasts for new episodes. You can also watch this podcast on the Invisible Machines YouTube channel. Special thank you to user 6966388930 on SoundCloud for the thoughtful comment about experience design on episode 5. I hope you enjoyed episode 6, and I hope episode 7 has been useful as well. That goes out to all our listeners, but especially those involved in experience design. This is an important moment, and we need your help. A special thanks to the marketing team at OneReach.ai and the team at UX Mag for all your support. Thank you, as always, to Michael Litvinov, our video editor. We look forward to connecting with you again next week on Invisible Machines.